Happy Wednesday, everybody. Here we are having a conversation. These are my Attention Live friends, and we're sonic streaming right now. We're all in the grass, as you can see. I thought it might be wise for us to all have a similar background. So here we are, just, hanging out in the grass together. It's fresh. This is a fresh new thing. This is an introduction. So quickly, let me introduce my friends that are with me. I have Gabe Vigors. Gabe is our entrepreneur in residence. Gabe's been with Attention Live since we had the idea at a Google Startup Weekend 3.5 years ago. Nigel Wright is our ambassador and an incredible, become an incredible friend, and also has used our product and tried all sorts of new things and pushing the boundaries. And we all three love spending time with Nigel, doing sonic streaming with him. And Ted Haas, our chief of ethics, who has been chief of ethics at my companies for almost a decade. And he doesn't help us focus on doing no evil, as is Google's statement. He tries to help us focus on doing what is righteous. Keep the focus on the positive impact that we can make. Gabe, you want to add anything about yourself? And then I'll go to Nigel and Ted, maybe 15, 30 seconds. Something interesting about yourself people may not know. Go ahead, Gabe.
I am 18 years old. That is something. I've been with Ian since I was about 14, and that's what I'll save, and the rest will save for my interview talk.
Sounds good. Nigel, anything you want to add or tell folks that they may not know about you?
Two things. Voice CEO. That's Chief Engagement Officer, not Chief Executive Officer, and Gratitude Champion. I am grateful every day, grateful to be here, grateful for all of you.
We're grateful as well. Teddy.
Well, I'm two things about myself. I'm 6'9", and yes, I do play basketball.
Yes, you do. And you one wheel. Teddy and I
one wheel too. I play basketball better than I one wheel though.
That's true for now. My dad's 69 and he is shredding on the one wheel. So you give it another 20 years, Teddy. You don't know it may happen.
I have to say something.
On the one wheel. I'm shredding on the one wheel. It depends on defining shredding.
I saw the video, Ted. I saw the video.
Oh,
Ted.
You saw it. That was epic.
I had to say something.
See my perspective. Okay, so what's happening, everybody, is this live stream to our YouTube account is very informal, authentic, raw. And then each of us are going to interview each other. We're going to do this 8 times this month. We have some intention in terms of what we're trying to cultivate. And when the person's being interviewed, they're going to go live on the Attention Live sonic streaming platform. I'll start by interviewing Gabe. Gabe will then be interviewing Nigel. Nigel will interview Ted. Ted will interview me. The question for today is about what qualifies you to talk about this specific topic. Gabe's topic is entrepreneurship. Nigel is voice diversity. Ted is ethics, and me, I'm family. So I'm going to have Ted and Nigel stop sharing their screen and go on mute while Gabe and I have a conversation. Gabe's going to broadcast live to his sonic streaming platform. We'll see you two guys in just a moment.
All right.
Okay, Gabe, here we are.
We are live.
We go. Yes, we are live. So why don't did you start your stream? Are you ready to go?
Stream's all good. I'm ready to go.
Let's do it. So Gabe, the question that I have for you, and feel free to answer my question with a story or to have a dialogue with me.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to talk about entrepreneurship this month. And you are our entrepreneur in residence. And you've been with me and my entrepreneurial group for several years. Your dad is one of the most successful friends that I know that's an entrepreneur in the tech space. So I think you certainly are qualified, but what's your perspective? Why are you qualified to talk about entrepreneurship?
So when I was about 12 to 13 years, I started a bow tie company, about 12 to 13 years old at the Google Startup Weekend. And that was about 5 years ago. I was 12, 13 years old. I pitched an idea in front of a bunch of people, and I probably wasn't the best pitch because I was like reading off the paper because I was scared. Like I didn't take my eyes off the paper for the pitch. And so I did that. I did justice bows. I sewed bow ties. I did that for about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, I would say. And it wasn't my passion. It's not something, because I just mainly did it to get my name into the Google startup community, because basically that's how I met you, which has led me to this opportunity as well. And so I'll explain what the Google Startup Weekend is everyone goes on a Friday night, they pitch their idea, and then there's a bunch of people there. There's like developers, designers, engineers, a bunch of different people, marketers, and then someone picks an idea, they like an idea. 8 to 10 people can join a team, and then they help build that idea. And so I've gone to 5 about in total. And I met Ian, and I think my third. Yeah, I think it was the third one I met. He pitched something about voice tech. And I think, Ian, when you first pitched, you didn't even really have a set idea. You were just like, I want to do something in voice tech. In voice tech. And originally what birthed out of that was Woomvi, which is now attn.live. And so I've been working at attn.live for about 2.5 to 3.5 years in total. I started as a technical intern for about 2 years, and now I've taken on the role as the entrepreneur in residence. And so some tasks that I do at attn.live is I'm in control of the beta program. I keep that running. I chalk that up and all that. I've made over 2,000 NFTs and some other small things, or like HubSpot lately, and just little things like that. But yeah, that's what I've done.
You made over 1,000 one-of-one NFTs
2,000
in 2020. And a lot of the one-of-one NFTs that you made were the first of its kind. And we got huge companies like Google and Amazon and Samsung and Ford, all these massive corporations, to approve our ability to create NFTs. So if you don't know about that, you should check out the Voice Den, TheVoiceden.com, to see some of the cool things that Gabe had done there. Gabe, when you think about your role as an entrepreneur in residence, which is a role that I held 4 different times, a couple nonprofits, a couple corporations, which is one reason why I invited you to have that role, because it's something I can, train you on how to be an effective entrepreneur inside of an organization. What are you most excited about today, and what are you looking forward to?
I'm most excited about today is to learn about you guys as well, create some great content, and see where this takes us.
Fantastic. So tomorrow we'll be covering, not tomorrow, but Tuesday we'll be back covering new ground. That'll be on what is the best investment. And I believe that Nigel will be interviewing you, Gabe, asking what is one of the most worthwhile investments, money, time, energy you've ever made that impacted you as an entrepreneur. I look forward to hearing the answer to that question. You can wrap up and close down your Sonic Stream. We'll bring Nigel and Ted back in. And next up is going to be you interviewing Nigel. I'll jump out. That'll be fun. So here's our transition, everybody. We're just kind of doing this live in front of everyone, which I think is fun. Nigel, why don't you come back and join us while Nigel pops in? Ted, any thoughts or feedback on the interview that Gabe and I just did?
Loved your bow ties. Those were cool.
Thank you.
I like that company. I remember my favorite was when Gabe set it all up at the Shasta event we did, right? The Future of Shasta. Mm-hmm. And you brought all your bow ties and you had them out for sale, and that was fun. They were very creative. I loved it. Okay. Ted and I are now going to bounce out, and Nigel and Gabe's going to interview you. And then when you guys are done, me and Ted can come back on and say hello, and then Nigel will interview Ted. So here we go, everybody. I'm going away. I'll be back in a moment.
See you in a bit.
So how you doing, Nigel?
I am doing fantastic. I am about to start my my Sonic stream. It's good to be here with you. This thing not happy with me right now, but all right. So let's just get started. So I'm interested. I just had to say this. Bow ties. We have another thing to talk about now.
Yeah.
Because I'm the bow tie guy. I did not know that about you. So it's always interesting to have that. Yeah. So let's get started.
Mm-hmm. So we'll get started
whenever you're ready.
I'm ready to go. So, Nigel, what qualifies you to speak about voice diversity? And you can share some things about your background that help the viewer just say who you are and what makes you qualified.
Well, I think first of all, I think everybody's qualified to talk about voice diversity. That's the thing. So just as me being an actual human being, I think gives me the qualification, just like it would give you or Ian or Ted. And I think that's something that we don't acknowledge enough. So if there was specific things about me that would help me to contribute to that conversation, it would be this. It would be one, that acknowledgement, because I feel like these are the things that are particularly important about voice diversity in general. We have to recognize the value of our own voice and everything that goes along with that, with being human, such as that we have our biases. So that's one thing. The other thing that I feel specifically first gives me a passion for it and gives me some of the insights and some of the opinions that I have is I have grown up. I grew up in New York City, a kid from Brooklyn, riding a train by myself since I was 7. And New York is indeed the melting pot. I've been around more culture and diversity. I should say I've been blessed to be around that all my life. I've seen good and bad in every sort of human, pretty much. I've sat, I've ate, I've enjoyed food, I've enjoyed culture. I'm fascinated by it. I think we all genuinely have a unique voice and a unique promise of value. And these are the things that I lean into. And when you hear me say the voice CEO and I say chief engagement officer, it's because of this. It's because of little things like what just happened that I did not know before this call. Now, I knew a little bit about the Google startup, and it was good to hear you share about those particular things. But the fact that you made bow ties. Now, I am a big fan of the bow tie. I went to Catholics. There you go. You're gonna have to send me one of those bow ties.
Yeah.
Give me a Gabe Vigors signature bow tie that I can rock in my collection. And I have a few classic pieces. I'm a big Knicks fan, so I have my Knicks bow tie that you might see on my Instagram page. A big fan of that. So I think that these are things that when you pay attention to them, when you pay attention to other people, when you value other humans, you recognize the abundance and the beauty of other cultures and sharing different experiences and just us having that human experience. And I'll share something more personal. A few years ago, this is when this first hit me. I was doing a Toastmasters presentation, and it was an introduction of who it is I was. And interestingly enough, as I was researching for something I'm doing called Colorful Language, which focuses on voice diversity, you'll be a big part of that. For those who don't know, obviously we have diversity between us, and I think that is going to transcend well into the conversations. But I wrote a piece because I write, Nigel, right? So, but I found myself in love with poetry later in life. And one of the pieces that I penned is, we are kaleidoscopes, colored by the intersections of our diversity, and unity is our destiny. And I genuinely believe, for me, that captured the essence of what voice diversity is. I think that the ideal situation is when you can build with any group, any culture, any individual. And it's when you are able to have a value exchange. And that value exchange comes from your experience, my experience, the people you know, the way you grew up, the things you like, the things you don't like, the things that you know that I don't, and I know that you don't. And that, when that comes together, when that, meets and that intersection happens, it's just a beautiful thing. And I think that is where the value of a true 1 + 1 = 11 happens. So these are the things that I feel are super important in terms of voice diversity and what I bring to the conversation besides being human. And because we're in the voice space, and while I'm not a voice guy, I have been in technology for 30 years and worked for some did some pretty interesting things before the dawn of the internet. Like I was one of the first people to bring actual imaging, which we take for granted every day, into a courtroom when I worked for, Arthur Young back then, and then eventually Ernst & Young. But I also worked on the New York floor of the New York Stock Exchange for, big financial institutions like JP Morgan Chase and things of that nature. So I do have, quite extensive experience in that corporate financial tech space and just troubleshooting and technology and software testing, which brought me to Attention Live. But fascinated by the voice space, super encouraged and passionate about voice diversity, and genuinely looking forward to meeting some incredible humans, sharing and exchanging stories and demonstrating why we are stronger together than we can ever be individually. So I hope that answers the.
No, yeah, that was a great, thorough answer.
Been thinking about it a little bit.
Oh yeah, so
we're coming up on time here. Don't
Yeah,
forget
I know.
about those bow ties. And I'm just going to say that I'm looking forward to our conversation specifically about diversity, because I think that one, I'm fascinated to learn something new about you every day, just one happenstance at the moment. But as we dive in more deliberately and from the few conversations we have, I think it's going to be an interesting ride. And I look forward to us sharing freely and, transparently, so that everyone gets the best of being able to see what true diversity looks like and how we can actually build. So looking forward to that.
as am I. And that's
So you want to bring everybody back in?
Ian, are you ready to come in? Oh, yeah, Ted is, I believe.
Here we are. That was great.
Yeah.
Great conversation. I gotta say, I am quite excited about the next 8 weeks and the fact that each of us are going to be interviewing each other a couple of times. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the different person brings out in the other. So this is a fun time for us to do introductions, talking about qualifications. Gabe and I are going to jump out and we'll have the official interview. Nigel, with you talking with Ted about ethics. Ted, get ready to go live. Here we go.
Ready to go live.
Right now.
All right.
Awesome. Ted,
I think I'm going live.
going live.
Here we are.
It's better than going rogue.
I'm live. Loved your interview.
Oh,
That's cool.
Listen, I appreciate that. I am happy to be here with you. And I'm just going to start off selfishly to talk about that epic video. And anyone who hasn't seen Ted's video on the One Wheel, I encourage you to go see it. And the end was epic. So I would not miss an opportunity to shamelessly plug the video. Loved it. So how are you, Ted? Good to see you again.
I'm doing good. Yeah, the video is an example of one of the criteria for being a director of ethics. It's called humility. The ability to make fun of yourself. And I love it.
Well, that's what you get for being tall, said by the vertically challenged person that's here interviewing you. 6'9". It's a big dude.
That was really no big deal. I was riding my one wheel and I happened to catch myself falling off, which I love. Not that I don't love falling off, but I'm really glad if I caught it, because if you're gonna fall off, make an epic video out of it. So
that's it. Real life is undefeated. Let no one say anything different. So, chief of
still
ethics.
learning to go up hills, so that's the challenge. So
how fast have you gone? What's the fastest you've gone?
I don't know. I don't look at the speedometer.
All right. Well, we'll have to clock that. We'll save that for another time.
I like to go back and forth and stay under control, and so
bob and weave. All right, I got you. Okay, so let's get into ethics. You are the chief ethics officer over at Attention Live.
Chief of ethics.
Chief of
COE.
ethics. COE.
I guess.
Okay, chief of ethics. You're the ethics guy. I'm just going to call you the ethics guy. I don't know if that's appropriate, but I feel like you're the ethics guy.
We'll let it slide for this time.
I feel like the ethics guy. We have that in common. I love ethics. I love standards. I love that there's, some kind of guardrail sometimes for those, we're human and we tend to do things that are sometimes incredible, but sometimes we need a little guidance. It helps. So I appreciate you being that. So Ted, tell everybody what do you think qualifies you to speak about ethics specifically?
Well, I mean, I was thinking about that. I could mention that, like everyone does when what are you qualified for, and talk about your great accomplishments. So, I won the award for being the most humble guy in Silicon Valley, but I wore it. They gave me a medal, but they took it away because I wore it. So,
touche. Touche.
Yeah, that's I mean, for 30 years I've been in nonprofit ministry, and I've been advising leaders, and trying to help them work through the challenges of not just running something ethically, but looking outward. I mean, that's been the real big thing, to whether it's with nonprofit leaders of churches or government leaders in the social sector, mayors of cities, or business leaders, CEO, entrepreneurs, to help them understand and look outside of their own organization and more fully align with their mission and with their calling. So it's the experience of working with leaders, but I think really what qualifies me is relationships that I've been graced to have, and an ability to listen, and critical decisions. When you listen, you can either justify yourself and tune the person out, or you can press in and say, I mean, that's always complicated, because whenever you're in a challenging, confrontational conversation, there's always a tendency to justify yourself. And one of the great ways we do that is we pick out the flaws in the other. So just as a heads up, Nigel, if I ever confront you on something, I'm not going to be perfect, and there's going to be plenty of ways for you to write me off.
Well,
but if in that crisis, if at that time you're able to humble yourself, exercise humility, and listen, you can gain incredible insight. And I think it's the relationships I've built. I think of one example of many just incredible mentors and leaders I've been able to learn from. And I guess I've been just blessed to have this diverse group of leaders that, I don't know, when it happens to you, you just take it for granted. But then you look back, and you go, oh wait, this isn't normal. The type of I was able to build a deep relationship with a man, Chief Jay Swallow. So he was Native American leader Christian leader, got radically saved when he had a life transforming experience. When he was a young man, he was strung out on drugs and alcohol, and on Skid Row, this was 60 years ago. He's no longer with us. He passed away in 2015, but and he ministered all across North and South America, North America and Canada, and really all over the globe, and an incredible leader. Very, very intelligent. But boy, you're talking about he was a historian for his people, but he was born in a teepee and raised, really, it's a whole different world. And so he's a historian. He's like one of the intellectuals, one of the academians of his culture. And he was one of the last generation. So he was raised up speaking his native language. But their culture is entirely different. They don't have institutions the way we do. They have an oral history. They would meet together regularly and just talk. And that's how they preserved their history. But by building a relationship with him, just the diversity with which I was able to learn, see things differently, by learning from him, I could see things through his eyes. And, when I'm speaking about humility, I remember one of the early on, we were on a road trip together, and I was just blessed. I was blessed to be in a van with him, and he was, I don't want to say he was cursed, but he had to be in a van with me. And I was so curious. I have just a curious nature, and I was drilling him with questions. So he taught me about the talking stick. He grabbed this stick.
Okay.
Let's see if you can see this. This is a selfie stick. Okay.
Yeah.
So imagine he has a stick. And he says, let me tell you about the talking stick in our culture. When we meet together and we're talking, the man who has the stick, he talks. And he keeps talking until a mic, until he passes the stick to the next man. He says, I have the talking stick. I loved it. It was his gracious way of saying, shut up and listen, Ted. You know so much.
That's a great lesson. My uncle used to say, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And that's the one that always stuck with me specifically. But I wanted to ask you I want to touch on something that you said about, coming at, the way you put it was coming at people with questions, but it's something that I truly believe has value. And I wanted to hear your feedback on it. I think spirited debate is necessary to get anywhere. Absent ignorance, of course, but I think spirited debate is absolutely necessary. What do you feel about that in terms of getting to the deeper root of issues?
And I feel like, yes, spirited debate. And I see that's really, it's a lot harder thing than people say it is. Everyone's open to spirited debate as long as they win and they get the last word. But if we can actually if we can go beyond just the surface talk to actually examine the deeper roots, and we have a relationship that's strong enough that I can hear you and I'm not threatened by you challenging me. And I think of the times when I've really grown, it's when somebody who sees things differently than me. I mean, I used one example there, someone who sees things differently said something that was hard to hear. But we need spirited debate. But generally what I see happen with spirited debate is as soon as it gets spirited, we write the other person off who disagrees with us and then go back to our hiding our own fear, our own insecurities. And we don't really listen. But the stronger the relationships can be, and it has to get, it should be polite and not become ad hominem, but until you're passionate, until you really get into the core things, until there's a platform where it's safe to say things that you're thinking but are not allowed to be said, and then in a safe place, that's where the growth really happens. And if the relationships can stay, if the relationships can be stretched, I think it's a lot like a muscle. If you injure a muscle, you pulled it too far and it's torn. But for a muscle to get stronger, it gets pulled just far enough that it says, "Ooh, wow, okay," and it actually has micro tears. And then that tells the body to strengthen it. If we can hold the relationship strong and have a context where there's deep, passionate debate, but we're listening to each other, it's interesting.
I love that.
That's one of the.
I'm definitely glad you said that. And, I want to make sure that we put a pin in the fact that I would like to have this conversation, more deeply with you when we have more time. And I'll leave it with this.
Well, we're going to be together for 8 weeks, right? 8 times, 8 sessions.
Yeah, but that we don't have to be like you told me when we first met. We don't have to narrow our focus just to 8 weeks. We have a lifetime that kind of goes. So I'm going to jump on with the other folks, and I'm going to leave everybody with this thought. I had this woman, she was Haitian, and she's a CEO, and they were asking her a question, and she spoke about that, what I call spirited debate, and she used a term that I loved, and I'm going to share, benevolent friction. And so I will leave it there and bring the other guys in.
Bringing it full circle, my mentor, Jay Swallow, I mentioned, he called it the threshing floor. And that was one of his lifelong passions, to create a context where people could have spirited debate and really hash things out and grow together.
Well, those are the three things we're going to title our room when we talk about it. So let's bring in the rest of the guys and let's keep this conversation going. Thank you so much, Ted. That was amazing.
That was great. I really love that. Gabe, what stands out, if anything, about the conversation Nigel and Ted just had?
It was a fantastic conversation. Ted always has great things to say, and so does Nigel. So I think the two of them communicating is nothing but beneficial to come out of that conversation, because it's always Nigel's got a lot to say, Ted's got a lot to say, and it's always very interesting to see what happens out of that conversation.
I think they need to have a talking stick.
Yeah.
I need a talking stick. I need whoever I'm talking with, they need a talking stick to restrain me from talking.
I resemble that remark. And I appreciate you.
We just have to change cultures. You go to a Latin country and you're all allowed to talk at the same time really loud. You know, when I first went over there, I thought they were fighting, but just having a conversation.
See, diversity
right, cool.
At work.
Well, here we go. Teddy, it's you and me. We're talking family. Gabe and Nigel, see you in a moment.
All right.
Okay. Ian.
Yes, my friend.
Talking about family. What qualifies you, Ian, to talk about family?
I am a son. I am a father. Being part of a family would qualify one to talk about family. And Teddy, I'm glad that it's you and me launching this. I will talk a bit about qualifications. I am broadcasting live through the Attention Live song streaming platform. So if folks are listening to my YouTube account or listening through an Amazon Echo device, thanks for your attention. You won't be able to see this, but this is a photo. Let's see if I can get it to show up. Oh, I want it to look. Oh gosh, don't you want to see what that is? There it is. It's me and my boys on my treehouse. And my friend took this last week when he was visiting, and I'm sticking my hand out to my son. That has a lot to do with family. Come here, son. And that is something that my mother, my father did for me my whole life, right? They're up on the tree and they invite me onto an adventure, and they modeled something for me that I get to now do with my children. I get to stick my hand out and say, come to me, child. For when you're with me, it is safe and it is fun and it is full of life. So as far as qualification, I haven't written books on being a father or being a son. I don't do conference speaking on family, but for my entire career, the primary thing that I've called myself is a father, more than a businessman or an entrepreneur or anything of that nature. So I'm really passionate about being a dad. It is my favorite NFT artist posted last week, Josie Bellini, who I am constantly wearing her shirts and has the augmented reality. And I've collected her NFTs for the last few years and really grateful for her impact, her art. And she posted this question: what did you want to be when you grew up? And like right immediately, I remembered that really like a primary thing I wanted to be was a father. So it's very much on my mind, family. And I think if I keep being a good daddy, then everything else will be benefited from it.
That's cool. So what's the opposite? What would qualify someone to not have the authority about family?
Well, I would hesitate to think that people that are not parents, they would be limited to be able to talk about what it's like to be a parent. People that have not overcome hardship with their parents as a child, I think they'd be limited to be able to talk about what it is to be a great child. So much about being a child is to learn to be humble and to follow and to put your faith in other people. So much about being a parent is to learn to lead and to take responsibility for those that follow you. So if somebody is disconnected from their mother or father, they haven't talked to them in years or decades, and there are completely valid and legitimate reasons for that. But if that is the case, that might limit their qualification to be able to talk about how to be a great child, because they have not yet to this point overcome hardship. And I have had plenty of hardship with my dad and my mother. It would have been very simple, many, many times over, for me to write them off because I didn't like some advice they gave me, or they didn't support me in the way I wanted them to support me, or there's other things. I'm not going to say other things because I honor them so much. I don't want to get any specifics that could have hurt our relationship. And there's lots of parents that aren't present for their children, right? Like, I am overwhelmingly present for my kids. My 12-year-old sleeps on this arm. My 8-year-old sleeps on this arm in our tree house. They travel around the world with me. I will stop anything I'm doing if they FaceTime me. They are my priority. Certainly they are in my heart, not my actions. My actions don't always reflect that. It's hard to have our actions follow our desires. But I think that would be a disqualification to really speak with authority about family if you have not maintained family well. Now let's say I have conflict with a sibling. Would that limit my ability to talk family? I don't know. I think that siblings go in and out of great connection, and sometimes there's friction. When I think of family, I primarily think of being a son or daughter, being a mother or father. That's really primary family. The sibling, the auntie, uncle, nephew, niece, grandpa, grandma, great grandchild, those relationships are a little less nuclear in my mind. So I really think that when it comes to family, you have a couple things, right? You have physically, biologically, I am a son of a mom and dad. I am a father of 2 boys. You can take the spiritual element, right? When Jesus talked about God, he didn't have some theist view of some distant creator. He talked about God as Abba, which is the word daddy.
That was pretty radical too.
Absolutely. So I think there's something there as well. Like, part of understanding family is biological. That's the part that we touch. I'm a son, I'm a father. And another part of understanding family is, like we have heard and we speak about, we're all brothers and sisters. We're all humans. We're part of the same human race, right? If you are a theist, if you do believe in God, maybe you have been able to become to this place of enlightenment that Jesus laid out a path for us, in the sense of, like, God, when I think of God, I think of daddy. When I think of myself in a spiritual sense, I'm a child made in his image and likeness. So I think that the family element is more physical as we talk about it, but there certainly is a spiritual element to family as well, in the context of Ted Haas. You are my brother. Your 4 children and your wife, they are my brothers and sisters, right? So you can look at family that way as well, if you choose to.
Yeah, I have a question. So you've already touched on how you consistently prioritize your family and specifically your boys, because they're at that age where they need to be prioritized over your role as CEO at Attention Live. And that's it's not easy if you're in the startup world. There's so many pressures pulling you in the opposite direction. But I want to ask you, and it's exemplary, I've seen you do it, but I want to kind of reverse engineer that. What benefits do you feel you bring into your role as CEO of Attention Live and as an entrepreneur? Because in your bottom line, you're first a father, and that role overrides everything else. What benefit by prioritizing your kids over being CEO of Attention Live do you get in your role as CEO of Attention Live?
Well, I'm a healthier human. I mean, is there a greater benefit than that? I'm a better man. I'm a much safer person for myself. So I've made what's a real priority in life the priority in life. Therefore, everything benefits. Because I'm so focused on being a father, it does give me a very empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate, fatherly, caring heart for employees and clients and vendors and partners. It also gives me a very adventurous and risk-taking and warrior-like heart as well in business. I think that's very much about being a father. And so I approach this with the abandonment of, come on, kids, let's go and do this adventure and like, let's fight. Like we can do this. So I think there's things about father that are compassionate, empathetic, sympathetic, caring for a child. And there's also things about like, no fear, let's go. And so because I'm focused on being a dad and a holistic dad, I think that does translate well into all my relationships in business. I think it's a great question. I'll end with this. One of my mentors, who I really appreciate so very much, a man named Mark Toback, had the joy of working with him many times over the last 2 decades. He told me one time, he said, Ian, kids spell love, Time. And as a son, I believe I really was most concerned about my dad, him giving me his time, not a car or a meal or a roof. It was his presence. And same for my mom. And I think that's the thing I focus on with my children and with family. I don't think business is a family. I don't think that Ted, you and Gabe and Landrew and Jen and Nikolai and Sergio and the rest of the Attention Live team, we are not a family. When it comes to Attention Live, we're a team, more like a sports team that maybe loves each other. Family's different than business, but there's certainly a lot of things that can be learned from family dynamics that help the business environment.
Yeah. Excellent. Love it. Yeah, no, and what I've seen from you is definitely there's a deep empathy, a caring that that overflows in your relationships. I've seen it over and over. And I think you stay on top of that because you're putting first things first. But I loved what you said about the adventuresome side. I hadn't really connected those before, but that's very intriguing. So great. This is exciting. Good stuff. Looking forward to the next 8 weeks, or as Nigel would say, hey, we got a whole lifetime.
We do have a whole lifetime. Let's bring Nigel and Gabe back in. I'm going to end my sonic stream. So those that are listening, thanks for your attention. We'll be back again soon. We are still streaming through YouTube though. So for those that tuned in on YouTube, what you have watched, most likely you're watching this as an archive, not live, because we didn't do any promotion around this. You've watched 4 guys that have built a friendship. Ted and I for a decade, Gabe and I for several years, Nigel and myself for the last year. And as these 3 men have come into my life, they've also come into one another's life, right? When Gabe came into my life 4 years ago, he came into Ted's life, and Nigel into the 3 of us. And we all have our specific sweet spot. And sweet spots change. For now, Gabe is entrepreneurship. Ted is ethics. Nigel's voice diversity. I am family. And for the next month, we're going to meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern to noon, 8 to 9 Pacific time. And we'll just do this. We're going to go live on YouTube. So it's authentic, it's raw, it's vulnerable, but then 2 of us will jump out and we'll do kind of this 10-minute interview. We'll do 8 different topics, and this will allow us to get to know each other, allow those that listen to our sonic streams to be able to get to know us better, right? It gives us a chance to be able to give a little more insight in terms of who we are, how we tick, how we think to the people that tune in. So any final thoughts? Gabe, let me hand it off to you first. Final thoughts as we wrap everything up.
I think it's a great opportunity just to, first off, when we started, like today, we just started with introduction, tell a little about ourselves, why we're here, why we're on this screen right now. And I think that's helpful. And yeah.
Awesome. Nigel, any parting thoughts from you?
well, one, I would be remiss if I didn't say this was very enjoyable. This was awesome. I learned a lot, which is always a plus, and I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. I learned a lot from each of you, a different perspective, and as building goes, this is what it's all about. So I appreciate the time.
Yeah, me too. Teddy, take us home. Once you finish your final thoughts, I'm closing down the YouTube live stream, and then the four of us can hang out for a moment privately.
I loved it. And I love the fact that we all have similar colored t-shirts on this black. We didn't coordinate with the wardrobe, but there you go. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, I got to know each of you a little bit better. And I really liked, what you brought up. Nigel, how did you say it? Spirited conversation, passionate dialogue. And I hope that's one of the values we want to create in Attention Live. That we have a place where it brings people together and connects them. And I think you touched on that. We want a place where you're going to hear diverse voices and have the context to build deeper relationships, that we create that threshing floor where it's able to have spirited dialogue and create a collaboration that is not just forced upon you or artificial, but is really driven by the people. So yeah, I love this. I thought this was great, and I was looking forward to these 8 sessions prior, but even more so now. So, and we hope that, and if you're watching this, feel free to throw out your questions. We'd love to have you be part of this.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, I'm in the live stream, and we'll be back for everybody on YouTube.